So we've all seen the movies. You know the ones. The gritty, desaturated beach landings, the spies in trench coats exchanging briefcases in the rain, the sheer industrial scale of World War II. It's a story we think we know, right? Backward and forward. But I want you to imagine peeling back the corner of that history book just a little and finding something wriggling underneath.
It is a disturbing image, but yeah, a very appropriate one for what we're covering today.
We are digging into the setting of Achtung Cthulhu. And look, on the surface, the pitch sounds kind of like a B-movie poster, World War II with Cthulhu monsters.
Right.
But we've got a massive stack of these campaign dossiers here. And what really struck me is that this isn't just a monster mash. It's a surprisingly coherent alternative history. It has a specific timeline.
That is the key. It's not just random skirmishes. We're looking at a whole narrative, or a secret war, as they call it, that runs parallel to the history we know. It has a beginning, a middle, and a terrifying end.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We aren't just looking at the stat blocks for the monsters, you know. We're going to trace the escalation of this whole conflict from the shadows of 1939 all the way to what looks like the literal end of the world in 1945. We're tracking the story.
And to really understand that arc, you have to get the atmosphere. The source material describes it as a world of two-fisted adventure, which is a very pulp, very 1930s term.
Yeah, you can almost see the comic book font.
You really can. But it clashes that heroism with these dread secrets and dusty tomes. It's this weird friction where you have a soldier holding a Thompson submachine gun in one hand and a spellbook bound in human skin in the other.
Which feels like a pretty chaotic way to fight a war.
Yeah.
So let's clarify who is actually doing the fighting here. It's not just regular infantry stumbling onto Shoggoths, right? The Allies have special units for this.
Well, sometimes it is, unfortunately for them. But officially, there are two main organizations on the Allied side. First, you have Section M.
That's the British outfit.
Correct. Formed in late 1939. Think of them as the stiff upper lip meeting the occult. You've got eccentric professors, occultists, and rugged commandos working out of some basement in London. They're using magic to fight magic.
And then a bit later, the Americans get involved with Majestic.
Yep.
And based on the notes, Majestic feels very different. Section M feels like this old secret club. Majestic feels more like the military-industrial complex showing up.
That's a really good way to put it. Majestic brings the firepower, the budget, the science. But on the other side of the trenches, the Nazi occult isn't a monolith either. This is crucial for you to grasp. The Nazis are basically fighting a civil war within their own ranks.
This is the part that surprised me. You have these two different flavors of villains. You've got the Black Sun and NotebookLM.
The Black Sun are your classic terrifying sorcerers. They believe in the old gods, the myths. They wield what the books call foul magic and summon dimensional horrors. Their goal is almost religious. They want to unleash Yog-Sothoth to just wipe the slate clean.
So they're the magic Nazis. Yep. What about NotebookLM?
They are the weird science Nazis, the Night Wolves. They despise magic. They rely on things like biological enhancements. And get this, Atlantean technology.
Atlantean technology.
Yeah. The dossiers mention blue crystal tech, using these ancient power sources to power laser cannons or even reanimate dead soldiers.
So you have the Black Sun chanting spells in some dark dungeon, and NotebookLM are in a lab building super tanks.
And they usually hate each other. That rivalry really drives a lot of the early conflict. They're competing for the Führer's favor, you know.
Okay, the stage is set. Let's wind the clock back. We're starting at what the books call 0 point, 1939.
The Gathering Storm.
So the timeline technically starts before the invasion of Poland. The first big event is a mission called Three Kings in July 1939, and this feels very cloak and dagger.
It is. It's set at Castle Karlstein in occupied Czechoslovakia. At this point, you know, the world is just holding its breath. The shooting hasn't started yet. British intelligence is deep behind enemy lines, trying to figure out what the Germans are up to.
And it turns out they aren't just moving troops around, they're moving artifacts.
This is the inciting incident. The agents discover that the Nazis aren't just preparing for a land war. They're trying to weaponize mythology. They find these unspeakable horrors being tested. It's the moment the Allies realize, okay, our standard strategies are not going to work here.
It's interesting that you say weaponizing mythology, because in August 1939, just a month later, we get the Shadows of Atlantis campaign. And suddenly, the map just zooms way out.
It goes global instantly. You see events in Vienna, Tibet, and Peru all happening at the same time. It shows the Nazi search for power is this worldwide dragnet. They're looting archives in Vienna, but they're also digging around in the Andes.
That section on Peru, I have to admit, I had to put the notes down for a second. It's visceral. The text mentions a town called Pucuacha, where there's a spate of pregnancies.
It's a deeply disturbing detail, but it absolutely sets the tone for the horror elements.
The children are born with fused fingers and holes in the top of their heads. It's pure body horror.
It is, and it connects directly to the Atlantean lore. The Nazis are looking for biological remnants of an ancient race to fuel their Nachtwolf experiments. It tells you that the cost of this war is being paid by innocent people in the most remote corners of the earth.
So 1939 is the setup, the realization. Then September hits, the tanks roll into Poland, and the world just catches fire. And the secret war expands right alongside the conventional one.
This is the period of what they call global escalation. As the borders fall, the monsters rise.
The timeline moves us to North Africa next, the Sea of Sand and Stone. And I think there's this misconception that a desert is just empty space.
Right.
But the source material paints it as this crowded, almost claustrophobic nightmare.
The desert in this setting is a place of ancient buried history. You have the Afrika Korps and the British Eighth Army chasing each other, sure, but they're maneuvering around ruins that just shouldn't exist. The dossier talks about the search for the lost oasis of Zerzura.
And the Zerzur Club in Tangiers.
Yeah, Tangiers becomes this chaotic hub of espionage. But the real threat is the isolation. If your Jeep breaks down in the dunes, you aren't just worried about dehydration or a German patrol. You're worried about, quote, exotic native races. Ancient things that live beneath the sand waking up because a tank tread just rumbled over their roof.
So the environment itself turns hostile. And speaking of hostile environments, we have to talk about the ocean. The timeline lists a campaign called Heroes of the Sea.
This is where the scope really shifts. Up until now, we've mostly talked about humans fighting humans, maybe summoning things. But the ocean belongs to the deep ones.
For anyone who isn't steeped in the lore, paint a picture for us. We aren't talking about sharks.
No, definitely not sharks. Deep ones are humanoid, amphibious creatures. Think slippery, green-gray skin, bulging, unblinking eyes, gills just pulsating on their necks. They live in these massive cyclopean cities on the seafloor.
And the war wakes them up.
Exactly. The U-boat war, all the depth charges, sinking ships, oil spills. It's disturbing their domain. So now Allied convoys aren't just watching for periscopes. They're watching for creatures literally clawing their way up the hull.
That is a terrifying image. You're trapped on a tin can in the middle of the Atlantic, and the fish people are boarding.
And it highlights a key theme of the Middle War years. The secret war isn't just Allies versus Nazis anymore. It's humanity versus the unknown. The Mago are another great example of this.
Ah, the fungi from Yugoth.
Yes, they are these pinkish crustacean-like aliens with these big membranous wings. They don't care about Hitler or Churchill. They're just here to mine rare minerals and steal human brains for study. They're third-party opportunists.
So while London is dealing with the Blitz and soldiers are freezing in the Arctic, you might just get abducted by a giant space crab because it needs your frontal lobe.
Precisely. It really emphasizes how small the human conflict actually is in the grand cosmic scheme of things.
Which brings us to a major shift. We move to late 1944, the turning point.
This is a critical moment. In the real history books, 1944 is when the walls start closing in on Germany. D-Day has happened. The Soviets are pushing from the east.
And usually when an animal is cornered, it bites.
And in this case, it bites with magic. The campaign here is Forest of Fear, set during the Battle of the Bulge. Intelligence reports a bad omen.
The team up.
The Black Sun and Nachtwölfe. They're working together.
Which, given what you said earlier about them hating each other, is a huge red flag. It's like the Yankees and the Red Sox joining forces. It screams desperation.
Or a command from the very top. They're building a secret facility using slave labor deep in the Ardennes forest. The goal is to unleash something called a slumbering horror from a ruined abbey. We see names like the Cowled Sorcerer and the Blackbird. These are high-ranking villains who have finally stopped fighting each other to focus on destroying the Allies.
This feels like the part of the campaign where the game master stops pulling punches. The difficulty curve just shot up.
And speaking of high stakes, there's a mission here called Assault on the Führer train, the Steel Behemoth.
It's an armored train carrying Hitler himself. And the mission is a decapitation strike. Now, obviously, we know how history went. Hitler didn't die in a train shootout in 1944. But in the game,
the players have agency. But even narratively, this mission shows the shift in strategy. The Allies are done investigating, they're done reacting, they're trying to cut the head off the snake.
But even if they stop that train, the war doesn't end because the true endgame isn't in Berlin. It's in Antarctica.
This is the finale, 1945, Assault on the Mountains of Madness.
The title alone is just iconic. We are going full Lovecraft.
Oh, we are. The location is the city of Blackstone, the Elder City. It's the most remote place on Earth.
And the geopolitical situation here is fascinating. The Third Reich has basically collapsed in Europe, so who's even left fighting at the South Pole?
The true fanatics, the remnants of the Black Sun and Akbolfa, have fled to Antarctica. They're described as squabbling for supremacy over these ancient ruins. It's basically Lord of the Flies with high-tech weaponry and spellbooks.
But there's one person who isn't squabbling. She has a plan. Matilda Grease.
A Black Sun master. And her plan is, well, it's absolute nihilism. She knows the war is lost. She knows the Reich is finished. So she intends to trigger a psychic scream.
Sounds bad.
It's worse than a bomb. It's a psychic shockwave designed to kill millions of people across the globe instantly. But the death toll isn't really the point. The death is the fuel.
Fuel for what?
To awaken the god in the mountain.
Okay, let's unpack this thing, because the description here is one of the most unique bits of lore in the whole setting. Usually these monsters are just big and angry. But this one...
This entity is ancient, and it's described as being so toxic, so fundamentally wrong, that it cursed the elder things, the aliens who built the city, with melancholy and degeneracy.
Wait. It gave the aliens clinical depression?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
It radiated a psychic weight so heavy that it broke the spirit of an entire advanced civilization, forcing them to hide underground.
That is terrifying in a completely different way. It's not just going to eat you, it's going to make you lose the will to even exist. And the Nazis want to wake that up.
If they can't rule a world, they will ensure there's no world left to rule. It is the ultimate scorched earth policy.
So this leads to the final huge moral dilemma of the campaign. To stop Matilda Grease, the investigators might have to ally with the Elder Things.
The enemy of my enemy.
But these are star-headed, barrel-shaped aliens who look at humans the way we look at, cockroaches.
Dim prognosis is the phrase the source uses. The Elder Things view us as a failed experiment, or at best, a nuisance. So the players are in this impossible position. You have to help these monsters save the world from the Nazis, knowing full well that once the Nazis are gone, the Elder Things might just decide to wipe humanity out next.
It's a rock and a hard place. If the rock was a Nazi sorcerer and the hard place was a depressed alien god.
It creates incredible tension for the finale. It's not a clean victory. It's just a desperate scramble for survival.
So, looking back at this entire arc, we start in 1939 with a few spies finding fused fingers in a Peruvian village. We go through the grinding horror of the desert and the deep ocean. We see the Nazis get desperate and combine forces in 44, and we end in 1945 at the bottom of the world, trying to stop a psychic scream.
It's a journey from the weird to the purely cosmic.
What's the takeaway here? If you're a listener or a player looking at this timeline, what's the core theme?
I think the so what of it is the unique position of humanity in this setting. In a standard war story, it's good versus evil. But here, humanity is caught in a crossfire. On one side, you have the Black Sun and the Nazis. That's active, malicious human evil.
And on the other side?
We have the mythos, the deep ones, the Migo, the god in the mountain. They represent cosmic indifference. They don't hate us. They just don't care if we live or die.
We're ants on a battlefield where giants are fighting.
Exactly. The heroism comes from the fact that we fight anyway. Despite the odds, despite the horror, Section M and Majestic and the Resistance stand up and say no. It's about fighting for humanity's right to even exist in a universe that seems determined to crush it.
It puts a whole new spin on the greatest generation, doesn't it? You thought storming Normandy was hard. Try doing it while a Shoggoth is eating your landing craft.
Indeed.
Before we wrap up, there was one final detail in that endgame dossier that really stuck with me. It's about the god in the mountain.
The one causing all the melancholia.
Yeah. The text says that it was never named. No living being knows its true identity. And here's the kicker. Even if the investigators win, even if they stop the Black Sun and prevent the wake-up call in 1945,
the entity is still there.
It doesn't die, it just goes back to sleep.
Waiting beneath the ice.
So if you ever look at a map of Antarctica and wonder why we don't build cities down there, maybe it's not just the cold. Maybe we're instinctively staying away from something that's still dreaming.
A sobering thought to end on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the secret history of the Secret War. If you're planning to run this campaign, good luck. You are going to need it. Catch you next time.